Welcome to Lesson 3 of MySci Unit 15, Observing Weather Patterns. In Lesson 3, students will answer the question, what is precipitation? Students will develop a model of a cloud to investigate cloud formation and precipitation. They will apply this model to the water cycle. They figure out that there are multiple forms of precipitation, and measures of precipitation are an important part of weather data points used by humans for a variety of purposes. In the Engage portion of this lesson, students will consider what the forms of precipitation are by watching a video. Students should recognize that rain, sleet, hail, and snow are all forms of precipitation. Students will then consider if there can be water in the air when it is not in the form of precipitation, what that would feel like, and what it is called. Guide students to discuss humidity and how this component of weather can cause the air to feel sticky on a hot summer day. In the Explore portion of this lesson, students will create a model to show how the air holds water when it is not in the form of precipitation using sponges, pipettes, petri dishes, and cups with water. They will add water to the sponge until it is saturated and observe what happens at that point. Refer to the Lesson 3 tutorial found on the MySci website for more information. Ask students to make a prediction of how many squeezes of the pipette it will take to make the sponge leak. Next, have students take turns filling pipettes of water and squeezing water from the pipette onto the sponge. Students will record how many squeezes of the pipette it takes until the sponge is saturated and stops holding water. In the Explain portion of this lesson, students will apply scientific language and processes to their model. To begin with, they will discuss humidity, which is the amount of moisture in the air. They will also watch a video about the water cycle and connect the model they created to this process. In the model, the sponge represented the air. The water added to the sponge represented water vapor, and the water that dripped represented precipitation in the form of rain. Students will also read Down Comes the Rain by Franklin Branley. Refer to the Read Aloud Guide, which can be found in the teacher pages for this lesson. Using the text as well as observations from their explanation, students should construct a verbal claim, evidence, reasoning to this question. Can there be water in the air without rain? Students should draw a pictorial model of the water cycle. The cycle should include drawing and labels of the processes of evaporation, condensation, and precipitation. In the Elaborate portion of this lesson, students will use 1-pound bags of gravel, 2-liter bottles, scissors, taper glue, and plastic rulers to construct a rain gauge. Rain gauges are the instruments used to measure precipitation. Keep these rain gauges, which will be used later in Lesson 5. Students will consider questions about how rainfall data could impact various people, including farmers, gardeners, and even themselves. In the Evaluate portion of this lesson, students will complete a formative assessment. Students will analyze average monthly precipitation, create a line plot, and answer analysis questions about the months in which Jefferson City, Missouri experienced the greatest and least amounts of precipitation. They will also compare this data to that of Kansas City. By the end of this lesson, students will have defined precipitation and its different forms, described how precipitation affects weather, and identified that a rain gauge measures precipitation.